Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 32. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
And before we get started, Jess, you just had an adventure, didn't you?
I did. I had an adventure this weekend. Me and my best friend Holly, who's been on the podcast before, we up and took off to Jacksonville, Florida for 4 days to go to the Welcome to Rockville Festival and saw a lot of bands that I've been wanting to see for a really long time. And I think the crowning moment of this adventure was the last night of the concert. The last band that played was Lynyrd Skynyrd. And Holly and I both grew up listening to that band. Both of our moms really, really love Lynyrd Skynyrd. So it was a little bit of a mind-blowing experience to stand there and think, okay, I'm standing here watching this band play the songs that I listened to when I was a kid. It was interesting.
That sounds really cool.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, the only problem was the whole thing was outside, so I came home kind of cooked. I've been fighting sunburn since Saturday.
Yeah.
My entire forehead peeled off. My right ear peeled off. And my left arm is going to peel, but it's not. It's got a couple of small blisters. My right arm has a bunch of oozing blisters on it because where we were standing, the sun was to our right. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but it was worth it.
As a very pale-skinned person who used to live in Florida, I can sympathize. And like lots of people have told you, aloe vera and shea butter is your friend.
Yeah. I mean, it's Saturday night when we left the concert. The first thing we did was look up Walmart, which, by the way, there's like 14 of in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, yeah. Jacksonville's a pretty big city. We
looked up Walmart and went, and I bought a big bottle of the Walmart brand aloe vera after sun gel with lidocaine. Lidocaine is your friend.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Yeah. Which I can actually, I mean, I still can't put a t-shirt on. I wore a tank top Saturday. I wore a t-shirt Saturday, but I rolled the sleeves up. So that's why my arms burned. And Sunday I wore a tank top. I bought 2 tank tops before we went, and I have only been able to wear the tank top since I got back. I can't put on a t-shirt because it hurts.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Yeah, that's the worst. And there's nothing, it's like, there's something you can do to make it feel better for a little while, but you just have to suffer through it until it all peels off and goes away.
It was worth it. I would do it again. Mm-hmm. Only I use sunblock for both days.
Yeah.
Lesson learned if we go back. I think our plan, though, maybe next year is instead of Welcome to Rockville, we're going to go to Carolina Rebellion.
Yes. Do that.
So you can remind me to wear sunscreen.
Heck, I will come with you. That's in Charlotte, right?
Yes.
Charlotte's only an hour and a half away. I'll come with you, and I will keep dumping sunscreen over your head.
There apparently are people out there, for people who don't know, I listen to rock and roll. That's what I listen to. And there's 5 or 6 music festivals that start at the end of April and go to the end of May. There's Welcome to Rockville, Carolina Rebellion, Rock on the Range, Iowa Rock Fest, and Rocklahoma. And apparently there are people who go to all of them.
Wow. Now that's dedication.
I would love to do that. That would be one hell of a road trip.
Yeah.
Because it starts in Jacksonville, then goes to Carolina, then to wherever Rock on the Range was, and then to Iowa, and then to Oklahoma. It makes a big circle. I think it would be fun.
It'd be crazy.
But yeah, we saw Papa Roach, who I've been wanting to see for years. We saw Shinedown, and I've decided I'm going to marry their lead singer. He walks out, he opens his mouth and starts singing, and I was a goner. And then he picks up a guitar and starts singing Bother, which is one of Stone Sour's real big hits. And I was just, that was it. That was all she wrote. I want to marry him. Of course, then we saw Shinedown Sunday, and I was like, you know what? If I can't have Corey Taylor, I'll take Brent Smith.
Hey, well, at least there's enough to go around. Except there's probably not.
Which I have seen Shinedown before. They played. We used to have a festival here called Big Spring Jam every September, But, they changed a lot of stuff about it, and people quit going, so they just quit doing it. But we saw Shinedown there in 2007, I believe it was. Maybe it was 2008. Anyway, I had seen them before, but they were really, really good. And most of the videos I took were of Shinedown and Leonard Skinner. But, yeah, it was fun. It was a long ride. Jacksonville's 8 hours from here.
Right.
And I had to drive because Holly's gimped up because she tore her ACL.
Well, how was she walking around a festival? She was barely able to walk.
With a knee brace.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
So.
Well, I hope she feels better.
She's having surgery May 13th. So, they're going to cut on her. They're going to go in there and see what's tore and fix it. And, yeah, it's going to be... She's going to be gimped up for a while.
Oh. Well, I guess we should probably talk about books.
Yeah. Enough of me ranting and raving about my weekend of rock and roll.
Yeah. Well, it's okay, because I've done absolutely nothing. So...
See, the one I really want to go to, though, is Rocklahoma, because that's the one that Lynham plays.
Mm.
I'm like, you other people look, Jacksonville could have had Lynham. They could have booked them.
They can come to Charlotte. That's okay. We'll let them.
Yeah. Well, hell, they play up there all the time anyway.
Yeah. So, before we get started on our regular topic for today, have you had time to read anything as you've been off adventuring?
No, I didn't. I took the Symphony of Ages book with me, but I didn't get a chance to read any while we were in Jacksonville, and I haven't really felt like doing anything but laying around and not moving since I got back.
Right.
So I haven't read anything.
Well, let's see. I'll talk about two things really quick before we get to our main topic. I'm so excited. I finally got to a point where I didn't have all this other stuff bogging me down to read. And I finally started rereading the Shadow World series by Diane Sylvan. I think I mentioned that last time.
Yeah.
But this week I finally was able to start the new one. And it's really good so far. I'm about halfway through it. It was worth the wait. There was a lot of questions at the very end of book 3 that book 4 needed to happen like now. So I am really enjoying it. There's still... You see, you get into this world that they created, and you think you know all of the rules by book 4. You think you know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, bam, she throws this curveball that's going to change everything. And you're like, but I didn't think that was a thing. And so
Don't you love that?
There's this character who you think you knew what you needed to know about him. And I shouldn't say that, because every single book that's had this character in it has just had a whole bunch of... He wasn't really in book 1 that much, but every single book you find out something new about him that he's either been hiding or that they just found out. So I shouldn't have assumed that I knew what was going on with him. But, oh gosh, these books are so good. You have got to read them.
I'm kind of planning on, if I can ever get some of the stuff I'm in the middle of finished, I'm going to read those.
They're so good. And with it being about a musician too, I think you would really like it.
Yeah, music's kind of my thing.
Yeah. So. It's music and vampires. What's not to love?
This is true.
And it takes place, well, okay. Let me ask you this, because you strike me as a person who has strong opinions about things. When you speak of the South, do you include Texas?
No.
See, Texas is kind of its own thing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say it kind of takes place in the South, but it doesn't. It takes place in Texas, so never mind.
Yeah, see, this came up one time. Holly and I were discussing this. We were watching YouTube clips of supernatural conventions, and Jared and Jensen were talking about being from the South, and I'm like, no, you're from Texas. That's different.
Yeah. See, some people consider Texas as kind of part of the South, sort of, but it's kind of its own thing. You're either from the South or you're from Texas.
Nobody from here is going to consider Texas part of the South.
Well, I think it's mostly people who are not from the South who think that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was gonna say that it takes place in the South, but no, it takes place in Austin, Texas, which is like the coolest part of Texas.
Well, I've been to Texas.
I've driven through Texas. I didn't.
Well, that's sort of what we stopped at a McDonald's in Texarkana, so I've been to Texas.
Yeah, I just drove through it on my way across country.
Well, we were coming home from Oklahoma. See, we went to Oklahoma last summer.
Oh, yeah, well, then you'd have to go through at least a little bit of Texas.
Well, actually, on the way there, we didn't, because we went to Tulsa, so we went through Arkansas.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But on the way home, we detoured about 2 hours south so we could go see Sean and Leah, who used to be on the tavern, Corwin and Jaden, or I don't remember what their other names were. But anyway, we went to see them because I knew if I went to Texas and didn't go see them, they would hunt me down and kill me. Much like if I ever came up that way and didn't come see you, you would probably hunt me down and kill me.
Yes.
So we went to see them, and we were far enough south that it sent us home through Texarkana, Texas.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was so cool, and Holly didn't understand why Texarkana was such a big deal. And I'm like, you've never seen Smokey and the Bandit, have you?
Anyway, so there's another book that I finally started, and you'll be happy about this, because it is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness.
Yay! I need to start that one, or reread it.
I finally found the stupid thing. I've been having a hard time. Now, I know I could, probably buy it on Amazon and get it right away, but I try not to do that as much just because...
Yeah.
And I know, Barnes & Noble, for example, the big store, and, it's not like a little independent bookstore or anything like that, but I also know that there's a bunch of them in my state that have closed. So I've been trying to shop more there instead of... or the used bookstore, because I'll support them too, but, try and actually go into a store instead of just going on Amazon. And this past several times that I've gone into Barnes & Noble, I could not find this book. And so I went in on my lunch break one day this week, and I'm thinking, okay, this is, from what I can tell, this is a story about a witch who falls in love with a vampire, or something happens with a vampire.
Yes.
Okay, so it's definitely fantasy, because that's not real, and it's also kind of a romance. So I'm thinking it can either be in fantasy, it can be in romance, or some stores have that paranormal romance section. It could be there.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking all through fantasy. It's not there. I looked in the regular romance section. I didn't think it'd be there, but it wasn't there. There were a lot of shirtless men there, but this book was not there. And I even took a trip through the teen paranormal romance, even though I didn't think it was a young adult book, but just to see if perhaps it got shelved over there. And I'm thinking, I know that this is a series that lots of people have read. This isn't just a, one-off thing. And so finally, I just kind of was wandering through the regular fiction shelves, and I was kind of looking across the thing, and I found it. It was shelved in just the plain, regular mainstream fiction.
Yeah, it totally doesn't belong there.
It's not. It's a witch who falls in love with a vampire.
Yeah, it needs to be at least in paranormal fiction
or something. It's just, it's not regular fiction. I mean, it was next to a book with a person on a sailboat. It doesn't belong there. So then I'm wondering if I should tell somebody, because there was 4 copies sitting there. I'm like, no, I don't want to have to try and find someone. That just sounds too much like work. But I haven't read very much of it yet, but it's, got magical stuff, and it starts off in a library, so I'm on board.
Yeah, I think you'll like it, especially when they get into, especially if you like the first one, you'll need to read the second one, because the second one is where they actually go back in time and start meeting a lot of famous literary people, like Shakespeare and what's his name?
Shakespeare and what's his name?
Yeah, I can't. Oh well. Anyway, you'd recognize his name if I could remember it. But it's a lot of references to stuff that literature geeks will get, because Diana is she's a scholar. That's what she does. She studies ancient manuscripts. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it a lot more, because this is a Tavern Book Club book, so eventually the book club for this is going to open on May 15th, so whatever the weekend after that is when we'll have our discussion episode on that one. But so I finally found it, and I'm reading it, and so far I like it. Like I said, I haven't gotten that far, so but it seems really interesting, and I kind of like the way that it's set up. So
yeah.
We'll see how
Well,
it
was one of those that I picked it up. I'd had it for a while, and I was like, I think I'll start this one, read a little bit of it before I go to bed. That was about 7 o'clock one night. 7 o'clock the next morning, I finished the book.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
So it kind of grabbed me and wouldn't let go.
Okay, so let's get on to our main topic for tonight, and I'll let you introduce it since it was your idea.
As we mentioned in the last show, we're not very organized at all.
No.
So we were kind of like, what are we going to talk about tonight? And I found this website called Booking Through Thursday. It's a WordPress blog, and that's what she does. She puts up a post every Thursday of a book-related topic for people to discuss on their blogs and then link back to. So she had this one that I thought was very interesting. It was, if your house was on fire, what one book would you save? And it said, for the purposes of this discussion, we'll consider a long series as one long multi-volume book, which is a good thing. But I thought we would expand on that and maybe do like our top 5 books we would save if our house were on fire.
Yeah, because I can carry more than one book.
Yeah, I mean, I always have a cardboard box lying around.
Yeah,
I can, shove a bunch of books in. But I think for both of us, probably one of the ones we would have to save would be the Belgariad Malorian.
Yeah, I think so. If I had to pick between them, because I would probably only take one or the other, I would probably take the Belgariad.
Yeah, I would have to. See, this is the problem. When you have an author who writes a story like that, that's technically all part of the same story, but it's 2 series, does that still count as 1, or does that count as 2?
You know what? You're right. I say we count it as 1, because it's all one story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take them all 10.
So that means. And, see, that also means we can get Belgarath, Polgara, and the Revan Codex, too.
Oh, that's right.
Because they are part of that, too. There's 13 of them.
We are so cheating.
We are, but it's because I'm going to have this problem when I get to the Mercedes Lackey stuff, too.
Yeah. Okay, so that's definitely one, and we're not going to go into all the reasons why we love it, because we've already done that for 5 episodes.
Yeah, I think we've covered that pretty well.
So, y'all know why we love the Belgariad and all of those characters. So that would be one of mine, for sure. The other one of mine that is just an absolute given, because you will not be able to pry them out of my hands, would be my Harry Potter books.
Oh, yes, I would definitely have to save Harry Potter, too.
Every single one of them. And see, this is why I was glad when you said that if it's a series that we're going to count it all as one big book, because trying to make me pick my favorite of the Harry Potter books, I can't do it.
Okay, well, since we cheated on the Bell Mount, I'm cheating on Harry Potter too, because if I'm going to save Harry Potter, I'm going to save my Harry Potter school books, and I'm going to save the Tales of Beedle the Bard too.
Of course, absolutely. Now, I have a question. If you had to pick your favorite Harry Potter book, which one would it be?
Oh, Lord. One of the later ones. I'm tempted to say Deathly Hallows, but it would probably either be Deathly Hallows or Half-Blood Prince.
Those are both good ones. See,
I don't know. Order of the Phoenix was pretty good, too.
Yeah, I think I would probably go with Order of the Phoenix. And part of that is just because it's a great book, obviously, but you know how sometimes when you're reading a book and it just, not only do you have the experience of reading the book, but it kind of takes you back to like how things that were going on in your life when you first read the book. The Harry Potter books do that is because there was such a big deal about them when they came out, the later ones. So I think I have a lot of good memories like around the time of when Order of the Phoenix came out. So I think a lot of that has to do with why I like that book too. It's not just the book, but it's everything else around the book. Like that was
sentimentality.
Yeah, that was the first midnight party I went to, and I don't know. There was a lot of fun that was going around that one. Of course, there was a lot of fun going around Deathly Hallows too.
See, Deathly Hallows was the one that we really, because Walmart did the midnight party and we went and got the bracelets and did the trivia and all that stuff. So yeah, that I understand what you're saying. I think that's part of why I'm so attached to Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, see, because Deathly Hallows, the midnight release party for Deathly Hallows was my second date with my husband. So there's a lot of good feelings for that too. So I guess I would have to say it's either Order of the Phoenix or Deathly Hallows for me.
Hey, I would like to find a guy that would be willing to go on a date to a Harry Potter release party.
It was fun.
They just don't exist around here.
Well, then move here. Problem solved.
Everybody, okay, you want me to move there. My friend Morgan wants me to move to Oregon.
Don't go to Oregon. It's too far away. How am I supposed to do a road trip to go into the used bookstore of awesomeness with you if you're in Oregon?
This is true. I'm not moving anywhere. Because backwards and backwoods as Alabama is, I actually kind of like it here.
Alright, so after we have the Belgariad and we're saving Harry Potter, what else are we going to save?
See, this is, okay, my next one would have to be my Mercedes Lackey books. And it's going to be every novel set in her world of Velgarth. I'm going to count them all.
And how many are there?
20-something.
This is worse than the Eddings books.
It really is, but it's because she'll do, like, duos and trilogies that are part of the same universe.
Uh-huh.
And they're all part of the story, because you don't get the whole story unless you read all of them. I mean, she's wonderful in the fact that if you don't read part of it, you don't realize you're missing it. But when you do read it, you're like, oh. So, I mean, she's really good. But, like I said, I want to save them all. If I had to pick one set out of that universe, it would probably be the last Herald Mage trilogy, which is Magic's Pawn, Magic's Promise, and Magic's Price. Because those books are so good. I don't know, I would want to do the Arrows books too, though, because those were the first Mercedes Lackey books I read, that whole sentimentality thing. This is why I want to take them all. All 20-something of them.
You're gonna need a bigger box.
I'm definitely going to need a bigger box. That would, I couldn't pick because I love them all so much. I mean, and two, there's some, like, Storm, Mage Winds and Mage Storms that go together. They're two separate series, but they are a continuous story, kind of like the Belgariad and the Malorian. So you couldn't take one without the other.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, yeah, I would want to take all of them. All 20-something of them. I'm going to burn to death picking out all the books I'm going to take.
Well, there is a very simple solution to all of this. You know what it is, right?
E-books?
Don't set the house on fire.
Well, there's that too. I have 2 cats and 2 dogs. God only knows what they're going to do.
But yes, ebooks would help you.
Smarter.
Ebooks would help you considerably, because I learned that the hard way when I had to rearrange all of my bookshelves, and all of a sudden I'm like, my Kindle's awesome. Because if I want to rearrange my Kindle, I pick it up off of my desk and I put it over on the table.
Look, I can sympathize after the whole building a new bookshelf and reshelving all of my books thing.
Yeah.
But there's just, and don't get me wrong, I love ebooks. And I want a Kindle so bad I can't see straight. But there's just something about a physical book.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I
The way
do.
they smell, the way they feel. I mean, I'm the weirdo that when I'm in the bookstore, I'm picking up books and sniffing them.
No, I understand. I do. And there is something about walking through a bookstore and finding the book that you
I'm
want
very,
and, you know, having that whole experience. For example, when I was looking for Discovery of Witches, it would have been easy for me to just, go on Amazon and click and get my Kindle copy. But it was a whole other
yeah,
thing when I'm walking through the bookstore and I'm looking, and all of a sudden there it is, and I'm holding it in my hand, and I found it, and there's that whole
there's a
aspect
little
too.
feel as that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that would be my next one. Would have to be my Mercedes Lackey stuff. I mean, I have some Mercedes Lackey stuff that's not her Velgarth stuff. I have the first of the 500 Kingdoms book, and I have several of her Elemental Masters books, which I've never read. So I mean, I've got stuff that doesn't go with that I would be willing to leave behind. Just not the Velgarth stuff. Not my Heralds. Not all that stuff. That stuff's going with me.
Right.
Got to.
Okay,
And
so the next one for me is going to be a bit of a classic. And I first read it when I was a senior in high school, and I fell in love with it, and I have loved it ever since. And I need to reread it again pretty soon. Thank goodness I have a copy that I got for free through Amazon, so I have it on my Kindle and my phone, so that's awesome. I love that they have their classics for free, most of them. That's pretty cool.
yeah, and if they don't have them, you can find them on Project Gutenberg.
Yeah. But anyway, the book I'm talking about is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte.
Which I have never read.
I love this book so much. I can't even begin to describe how much I love this book. I love this book, and I love the author because she was just badass when women writers weren't supposed to be badass. Her and all of her sisters, they were awesome. And the main reason I like Jane Eyre so much, I mean, I was 17, 18, however old I was in high school, senior year. But I loved the fact that there was this girl, a young woman, who kept being told that she was to be downtrodden and she was not to look beyond her station in life and all of these things. And even though she was very, low man on the totem pole kind of a life, she was orphaned and living with relatives who hated her and was immediately sent away to school so that they wouldn't have to deal with her. And a lot of the people at the school didn't like her because they were told by her family that she was this horrible person, so she was never even really given a chance. But she was just one of those people who pulls herself up by her bootstraps and says, I want my life to be different. I deserve better than this, and by golly, I'm going to fight for it. And again, this was at a time when women didn't have a whole lot of options. And it really impressed me even at a young age, and it still does, She was one of my strong female heroines, which, she's not one of these that's, a sword-wielding vampire or anything like that, but she's still, she kicks butt in her own right. And that's one of the things I like about her. And I still love the fact that all of the Bronte sisters were told that women couldn't write and that they, shouldn't even consider doing it because that was something that men should do and they shouldn't even worry about thinking, much less writing and publishing. And so they just all picked pseudonyms and published anyway.
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't realize that they were girls. They picked names that, well, they weren't really any gender, really. They were kind of unisex, but they were names that you wouldn't immediately say, oh, that's a girl. And they just did it anyway. They were like, screw that, we want to write. So take that.
I've never read Jane Eyre, but I have read The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde.
Uh-huh.
Which, Might be even better if I actually read Jane Eyre.
You should. It's really good, and you, like I said, you can. That is one of the ones that's free through the Kindle Classics or whatever it is. So you could read it through your Kindle app, or if you still have that tablet that you were using.
Yeah, but my thing with books like that is, in high school, my teachers were always like, "Oh, you have to read this. It's a classic." And I would try to read it, and I'm like, "This is the most boring thing I have ever tried to read in my life."
Yeah, not all classics are good. I mean, there are some that are not good.
The ones that I was given kind of left a bad taste in my mouth for the whole classics thing.
Well,
so I never looked any further.
Yeah, well, the thing with me is, like, some of that stuff really fascinates me, which is why I became an English major instead of actually, studying something that I could make a living on.
Well, I mean, it was like we were assigned The Old Man and the Sea was the first one we were given, and I'm just like, this sucks. I don't think I actually read it. Actually, I know for a fact of all the things that I was assigned to read in high school, the only one I actually read was To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, see, that's a classic, and that was good.
But I had read it before it was assigned to me, so.
Oh, maybe that might have had something to do with it. See, I have found that with some books and with some teachers, that there were some books that I read in high school with one of my teachers, and it seemed like the most horrible, boring book. And that wasn't because the book was horrible and boring. It was because the teacher was horrible and boring. And then when I studied it again, one of them, was it The Scarlet Letter?
Oh, my Lord.
It might have been The Scarlet Letter. Or it might have, well, I can't remember, but it's something like that. It's something that everybody has to read. And when I got to college, I saw it on the syllabus for this one literature course I had to take, like one of the early ones. And I saw it on the syllabus. I'm like, oh, geez, I don't want to take this. I hate that class. I hate that book. It's so god-awful. But my teacher that year was really, really fun and really upbeat and just made things interesting. And I think it might have been The Scarlet Letter, because I remember that we did like a mock trial on somebody, but like she made the whole thing fun, and then I enjoyed the book more. So I think that might have had something to do with it.
It's like, I've always enjoyed Shakespeare. I mean,
I love Shakespeare.
But when we did, and being a person who reads a lot of fantasy, you would think that when we did Macbeth in school, I would have been thrilled, because you have the witches and the ghosts and all that stuff going on with Macbeth.
Oh, the double toil and trouble people.
Yeah. A lot, and is this a dagger that I see before me handled towards my hand? I had to memorize that little soliloquy part. Anyway, you would think that I would be overjoyed at the prospect of doing, a fantasy-type Shakespearean play. No, because instead of doing what most of our teachers did and assigning us all parts and having us read the play, she had this tape of someone reading it, doing a dramatic reading of it, and it was awful. It put me to sleep. I was just like, oh my God. It was just bad. It was very, very bad.
And see, that's another one you have to have a good teacher, because Shakespeare can go really, really wrong. And I didn't read a lot of Shakespeare in high school, but I did read a lot of it in college, and I had two really, really good teachers for it. Well, one was a Shakespeare class, the other was it was a Renaissance theater class. So it was everything that was happening around the same time as Shakespeare, but it wasn't just Shakespeare. And they just made it fun. We had all these little assignments and different ways that we had to look at the plays, because we were doing all this analysis and other crap. But we just kept having a good time with it. And I mean, some of Shakespeare is supposed to be funny, and some of it is supposed to be really crass. And you don't think of Shakespeare that way. You think of it now as being like this high cultured kind of thing, but it didn't used to be. Not back in the day. No. But no, see, now you mentioned Shakespeare, and I'm thinking I'm gonna have to like redo my list. Because I'm thinking on my shelf I have the Riverside Shakespeare, which was the textbook I had to use, and it's huge, which probably means bringing it is not practical. I mean, literally, I was sitting in the hallway one day at school, and I was reading, trying to get caught up on some of my reading. I'm sitting there, and I have this book sitting on my lap, and a friend of mine walks by. I'm just like sitting like outside the classroom door on the floor. He walks by, and he says, "Why are you reading the dictionary?" And because it looked like one of those big Webster's dictionaries, and the print was really small and like in 2 columns. He's like, "What are you reading the dictionary?" I'm like, "I'm not. I'm reading my assignment. Shut up. Go away." But yeah, I probably won't take that one though.
Practicality never entered into this.
Yes.
We never said it had to be practical.
Well, I know, but that would mean that I'd have to knock one of these other ones off my list, and I don't want to.
Well, the only Shakespeare I have is a little paperback copy of Romeo and Juliet that I bought for $0.25, so I'm not real worried about it.
No.
So I don't have to rearrange mine for Shakespeare. But, oh Lord, what else would I bring? My Mortal Instruments books.
Yeah.
I would have to bring Cassandra Clare.
Okay, now here's a question. Are we going to be on the same, like, are we going to be running out of the same house?
That would be tremendously helpful.
Because then, like, I could borrow your Mortal Instruments books, because they weren't on the list either.
You have all those as ebooks.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So just save your Kindle along with all these other things.
Okay. But yeah, Mortal Instruments, that's a good choice.
Well, you know, it's one of those that I fell in love with the world and the characters and the concept the first time I read it, which, I mean, it took me a while to get around to it. You had been telling me how good they were.
Yes, I did.
And Holly had bought them, and I finally broke down and bought them. But it's like most things. When I buy it, it has to sit on my shelf for a year before I read it. I reckon it has to acclimate to its environment. But when I finally got around to it, I was looking at my shelf one night. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna go ahead and I was just like, I want to marry Jace Wayland, and Clary Frey can have Simon because I want Jace. But the whole concept of the Shadowhunters and what they did, and they're not really magic, but it is kind of magic with the runes and everything. It really fascinated me, and I fell in love with it from the get-go. So I would have to save those, because I definitely intend to read those again before the movie comes out. And hey, since Holly's going to be gimped up and not able to do anything, maybe I can beat her over the head with City of Bones until she reads it.
Oh, it's not enough that she has a bad knee. Now you're going to give her a headache, too.
Well, if she would just read the bloody book.
Okay, so I've listed 3 so far. I started crossing them off of my list, and then I realized I crossed one off that I didn't actually talk about. I'm tired. It's been a long day. So the next one on my list would be Paper Towns by John Green. I love this book. I love John Green. He's a pretty awesome author, and before I even had ever read any of his books, I got to know him on YouTube through this YouTube channel that he and his brother have called the Vlogbrothers. And anyone out there who has not watched the Vlogbrothers, you need to. They are just the coolest guys, and what started out as just kind of this experiment to try and these 2 brothers to try and get to know one another as adults, because they didn't live near each other. They were several states away, and they had been kind of close when they were younger, but not real close, and they kind of realized that they were brothers, but they didn't really know each other very well. So they were going to do this thing where they were going to trade these videos back and forth, and that was how they were going to try and get to know each other as grown-ups. That's how it began. And now they got all of these fans and followers, subscribers, that's what they call it on YouTube, subscribers. Yeah. And so I had to get my proper internet vernacular. And they it just grew into this community that's called the Nerd Fighters, because you have John, who's like the literary author nerd, and then Hank, who's kind of the scientific technology nerd, and now they do like all of this like charity work and raising awareness for all these different issues, and they're just really, really cool. And when I first started watching them, Paper Towns was getting ready to come out, so John was all like frazzled about trying to get all the revisions ready, and then they were doing all this other stuff, and he was just worried that everybody was, I guess authors always worry about whether or not people are going to like it or they're going to hate it, whatever. So once the book came out, I'm like, well, I've heard him talk about this thing for so long. I've never read any of his books, but I ought to go get this one because he's a nice guy. I ought to buy his book. And it's wonderful. It's so good. It's not fantasy or anything. It's just your straightforward young adult fiction. And it's about this group of kids in their senior year of high school, particularly this one boy named Q. His name's Quentin, but everybody calls him Q. And he lives next door to this girl named Margot. And they were friends as little kids, but they're not really friends anymore because she's kind of one of the popular girls and he's not popular at all. And all of a sudden, it caught me right at the very beginning because he's talking about some experiences that they had when they were little, and all of a sudden Margot shows up. It's the middle of the night. She shows up dressed like a ninja with like black face paint and everything. Shows up outside his window, and
okay.
And she's like, I need your help. We're going on a secret mission. Let's go. And they do all of this. They go through and they do all of this stuff, including she had found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her, so they went and got kind of revenge on her boyfriend. They lived in Orlando, Florida, so they broke into a theme park. They just did all this crazy stuff. And Q's like, like his dreams have come true because he's always had like this secret crush on her and was never really able to say it because they weren't really friends anymore. And then Margot disappears, runs away from home. And Q is certain, after a couple things happen, he's certain that she has left clues behind for somebody to find where she is. And he proceeds to try and do that, to try and figure out where she's gone. And it's really... It's one of those books, again, that you start at the middle of the night and you say, oh, I'll just read another chapter. The next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Especially once you get to the point where they all of a sudden have this, like, aha moment and they know where she is, or he's pretty sure he knows where she is. And it's the day of their graduation. And he got a present from his parents. They bought him a minivan. Because, well, you and your friends liked to go off and borrow our minivan, so we bought you your own minivan, which is what every 18-year-old boy wants, right? A minivan. So he piles all of his friends into it. They run to school to tell their parents that they're not walking for graduation. So they're all in their graduation robes. And they take off in the van on the road to go find Margot. And they think, they found something on the internet they think was her that was posting, talking about where she was, and they think that she's planning on leaving, so they're trying, it's like a race against time. They've timed everything down to how many minutes they can stop to get gas, and exactly how much money this one girl has left on the debit card that her parents have for her. They've timed everything and budgeted everything so that they can get there at exactly this moment, because that's when they think it's crazy. And it's so, the ending, it's so bittersweet, because one of the reasons I love reading YA is because there's always that kind of nostalgia and that feeling of what it was like when childhood is over.
Yeah.
That kind of loss of innocence. And there's definitely that in that book. At the end of that book. And the ending, it makes me cry every time. Because I'm just a sap. But, whatever. It's a really, it's a really, really good book. And since then, I have read all of John Green's other books, and they're all extremely good. I don't know if I'll be able to read The Fault in Our Stars again, because it was just one of those books that really like stays with you for a long time, but it was really, really emotional, and I don't know if I can handle that again.
Yeah.
But Paper Towns was the first one, and so it's my favorite, so that one's coming with me.
Oh, this is what's going to be hard, is picking the 5th series that I'm going to take with me. Because, you notice all of mine are series. I have none that are just a single book.
Yeah. That's because you're cheating more than I am.
That, and I don't read a lot of stuff that are standalones. I really don't. Most of what I read is a series of some sort. This could change. This list could change depending on my mood and, what day it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think my number 5... See, this is my problem. Do I go Lord of the Rings? Because I have a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff that I could cheat and bring with me. Or do I go with the Chicagoland Vampires books?
That is a difficult question.
Because, see, if I go Lord of the Rings, I have the Lord of the Rings, and do I get to bring all 3 of my versions?
Oh, come on now.
But, see, I have Lord of the Rings, I have The Hobbit, I have The Silmarillion, I have Unfinished Tales, I have the first 5 volumes of the Histories of Middle-earth. So, I mean, yeah, I have a lot of stuff. But those are easy to come by.
That's true.
However, back to that sentimental thing. My first set is a set that is older than I am, that belonged to my parents. It was the first set that I ever read.
Yeah.
Granted, the copy of The Hobbit that goes with it is, the binding has completely given up. But at the same time, I really want to take my Chicagoland Vampires books. I don't know. My number 5 would be very hard. It would be one of the 2. I guess it would be whichever one I could get to the easiest at the time.
Right.
Look, I'm just going to grab a box or a suitcase or something, and I'm going to start filling it up with books. These are the ones that I'm going to make sure I take with me. If I have room, I will, choose the other one too. But it would either be Chicagoland Vampires or Lord of the Rings. But if I did pick Lord of the Rings, it would be the old set, because, like I said, those are easy to come by. I mean, they're still in print. You can buy them at the used bookstore for, $2 a piece.
Right.
Whereas the Chicagoland Vampires are a little bit harder to replace. Sometimes the used bookstore has them, sometimes it doesn't. And, I have House Rules, which was kind of spiffy because I got it before it actually came out.
Yeah. Well, that was
read it.
That was the first physical ARC we'd ever had.
Yeah.
So that's pretty. So, okay, both of your choices have slightly sentimental reasons.
Yeah, they do.
You're in trouble.
I am. I don't know what I'm going to do. Because I'm not giving up my Belgariad. I'm not giving up Harry Potter. I might give up the Mortal Instruments.
Well, because those are pretty easy to come by, too. Especially right now.
Yeah. Where some of my Mercedes... See, the problem with Mercedes Lackey is a lot of it is easy to come by, but some of it's not.
Right.
And I've spent years completing that collection.
Yeah, so you don't want to give that up.
No, and then I have my Mercedes Lackey books that are, that up until a couple of years ago weren't in print anymore. You couldn't find them, you couldn't buy them because she got a bunch of death threats because of them. So after the first print run, they stopped printing them.
Oh, gosh.
And I have a set, an original set from the first print run.
Yeah, you can't get rid of those.
I couldn't let those burn. Even though, I have a hardback omnibus that I got from Science Fiction Book Club when they decided to reprint them.
Well, yeah, but that's not the first originals.
Yeah, that's not the ones that were printed before she got death threats and had to stop.
Why did she get death threats?
Okay, it's the Diana Treguard book. Diana Treguard is a witch, and she's this thing called a guardian who, protects the supernatural world or whatever. And a lot of crazy people were writing to Mercedes Lackey convinced that she really was a guardian.
Okay.
And that's the stuff she was writing about in her Diana Treguard books. and that if she didn't tell them, or didn't give them access to all this information and stuff, that they were going to kill her.
Well, that's
And
just scary.
And I think somebody actually broke into her house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So she was like, you know what? We're not going to write any more of these, and we're not going to print any more of these.
Yeah, we're done with these. That's okay.
But now, I reckon that the last few years, with the surge in popularity of supernatural and G-type stuff, they decided to try reprinting them. So,
well, hopefully there won't be any crazies.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, seriously. That's insane.
There's some real nut jobs out there.
Yeah, that is true. Okay.
I would love... I was tempted when I was in Tulsa, because that's where her and her husband live, is Tulsa.
Oh, okay.
I was tempted to, try to find her house, but only because she lives in a geodesic dome.
Oh.
And that would be very cool
to
see. I just want to drive by it. I'm not going to stop and do anything crazy.
I'm not one of those weird people. I just want to see your house.
I just want to drive by and be like, ooh, that's where she lives, and keep going. Because, seriously, she lives in a dome. How cool is that?
That's pretty cool.
And her and her husband rehabilitate birds.
Oh.
And I'm talking raptor birds. I'm talking birds of prey, big birds.
Big birds. But not big birds.
No, not big bird, big birds. And that comes through in her later Valdemar books. That becomes, when the Hawk brothers get introduced, they have these things called bond birds that they're kind of mind linked with, and she's very familiar with, birds and bird anatomy and things of that nature, and it shows when she, writes about the Hawk brothers and their relationship with their bond birds. So it's really cool.
That's pretty cool. All right, so my last one, and this was tricky, because, like you, I'm looking at this list and trying to decide what's left and what can I get rid of. And some of it was like you were thinking, which one of these are easy to come by if I need to replace it?
Yeah.
And so I was also trying to kind of diversify my books a little bit so that if I'm going to be limited on my books for a while, at least I have a wide selection.
Yeah, true.
So my 5th book is going to be Without You by Anthony Rapp. And it's kind of a memoir, sort of. Well, no, not sort of. It is. Or autobiography. Anthony Rapp was one of the original actors in the Broadway musical Rent.
Wow.
Which I love. And he was in it from the very beginning, from the workshop to off-Broadway to Broadway. And so he's kind of telling several different stories at once about his experiences. Going through that process, nobody thought that it was going to become as successful as it was. And, nobody thought that it would have the kind of impact that it did. And it kind of changed the way a lot of musical theater was done. It was kind of this total shift in style and led the way for a whole bunch of other musicals to, come through, because Rent kind of did it first.
Yeah.
And so it's chronicling this story, and the other thing that makes Rent kind of haunting in a way is because it does. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the show, but it's
sort of vaguely. I have it on DVD, the movie version, but I haven't watched it.
It's worth a watch because a lot of the really diehard Rent fans of the show, they really didn't like the movie because there is a very abstract, kind of an abstract art quality to the show, which you can't do that in a movie, so they're going to have to make it more concrete. They're not going to have a whole bunch of scaffolding and say, oh, this is a church. No, they're actually going to be in a church. That's just you just have to accept that. And they got almost the entire original cast in the movie. So, that's pretty awesome, including Anthony. So, but the thing that kind of made Rent such a legend was because the man who wrote it, his name's Jonathan Larson. And right before Rent opened, he died. And he was not very old, but it was like this freak thing. They thought he had the flu, and they thought that he was right on the cusp of getting all of this success, and all of a sudden he was gone. And I think he saw it open off Broadway. He didn't see it open on Broadway, and of course it won all of these awards. It won all these Tony Awards, and he wasn't there. Yeah. And so it was like everybody was so happy for the success, and they were all doing it for him, but at the same time, he was saying, when your good friend has this success, you want to give him a hug, you want to pat him on the back and say good job, and we were all so happy for him that we couldn't do anything about it. So it talks about that whole experience, and it kind of it goes across like a lot of things in his life, from when he was dealing with coming out and some of his experiences dealing with his brother with that, and some of the rest of his family too. His relationship with his mother, he was really close to his mom, and so during this whole experience with Rent, she was also diagnosed with cancer, and it's this really kind of tumultuous life that's all connected and put together with the Broadway show, kind of as a backdrop.
Yeah.
And since it's one of my favorite Broadway shows, and I will admit to having just a little bit of a crush on Anthony Rapp, because, he's kind of like one of those geeky boys that I like.
Yeah.
And, I know he bats for the other team. I don't care.
See, that's me and Matt.
I would never have a chance, but that's okay. I want to listen to him sing.
See, that's like me and Matt Bomer. When I found out he was gay, I'm like, you know what? I just really don't care. He's still pretty.
Yeah. He's... And it was really cool because I got to see Anthony Rapp playing his part in Rent. He was part of the touring company when they did their last tour right before Rent closed on Broadway. So I got to see him perform it. And we went to the stage door afterwards, and he was one of the people that came out. So I have his autograph.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. So I was being a total musical theater geek at that point. But anyway, it's a really good book. And because I really, really like him and I really, really like Broadway stuff, that one's going to have to come with me.
Yeah. There's so many of my books that I am so attached to that it would be hard not to just rip my bookshelf off the wall and throw it out the window if my house were on fire.
Well, hey, there's a solution.
It might be kind of hard. That thing's really heavy. I don't think I could pick it up alone. It took me and Daddy to move it, and that was with it empty.
But when you are like flushed with adrenaline and you are like in panic mode, I'll bet you could do it.
No, that's possible. But see, here's my other problem when it comes to this saving books thing. I gotta save my critters first.
Oh, yeah. I probably ought to get my children out of the house before I decide on what books I want to save.
Well, see, that's why you decide now. So it's like, okay, get the kids out, then you can go straight for these books.
Oh. Or there is the other solution. Let's just try not to burn the house down.
Yeah, well, there's that. I really, really would not like it if my house burned down. Because, like I said, I got 4 animals to worry about, too.
Yeah. We have 1 animal and 2 kids.
No kids. Me, Mom, and Dad, and then, Hemi and Sadie and Felix and Mo. So
I guess we've made our list, so I guess that's probably about it for tonight.
Yeah, and it's been an hour, so.
Yeah. And I thought that this would be not that big a topic. Oh well.
Yeah, see? I told you.
This is just proof we can talk for a long time about anything.
Which, we did kind of get sidetracked with the whole discussion about reading the classics in high school.
That's what makes it fun.
And, me talking about Florida and all of that jazz.
That's okay. Well, then let's go ahead and wrap it up. We want to know what books you would save out of a burning building. So if you would like to share and let us know what books you cannot live without, you can contact us by email, and that's bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter. We are at BibAnonPodcast. And then you can also leave us comments at our official website, which is www.bibliophiles-anonymous.com. And everybody does need to try and track down A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, because come the middle of this month, we're going to have it over at the Malorian Tavern Book Club, and we will talk about it here as well. So get your copies, start reading. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I have a feeling I'm going to like this one. So anyway, so I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Join us next week. We have no idea what we're going to talk about, but it'll be something fun. And until then, thanks for listening. Bye.